everyone, and welcome to tonight's presentation, which is all about Mastering the Common App, a comprehensive walkthrough. My name is Kathy Hart, and I am your presenter this evening. So welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight. All right, let me go over here. So as always, we are broadcasting over our social media channels and we are making a recording of tonight's presentation. And just a little tip, if you wish to go back and watch parts of this presentation, or perhaps you need to leave early and want to come back and view the recording, we are going to have some hyperlinks for you. So when you go onto the recording, you can jump to the different spots on the presentation. This one is a little bit longer than usual, in part because it is such a thorough walkthrough of the Common App. So this will allow you, let's say, oh, I want to go back and watch the activities page, or what did Kathy say about writing? You can easily do so. And another just a little bit of housekeeping for this evening. I am a one-woman show tonight. So unfortunately, while I am giving my presentation, I will not be able to view the chat live. However, I do invite you to put your questions in the chat. And at the end of the evening, I will go back and look at those questions and do my best to answer most of them. Also, students, if you have a question that's very specific for you, about your application, feel free to shoot me an email, and I am always happy to answer those questions outside of the presentation. All right, so we do have a good number of downloads available for this webinar. Now, you don't need to have these downloads in front of you in order to follow along, but they will be helpful as you work through the college application process. A bit later in the presentation, when I go over the activities page of the Common App, I will direct you to check out a couple of those activity tip sheets that we have included for you, and that will help make writing the activities part of the Common App pretty straightforward. All right, so we got a pretty full agenda this evening, starting out with what is the Common App, right? We got to know what we're talking about before we can actually look at it. What are the colleges that are accepting it? Then we are going to do the walkthrough accompanied by some screens with some additional tips to help you really write a very effective Common App. And give you a little timeline in the process as you are working through your college applications. I know sometimes it can seem like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do all at once, but we can help. I can help give you some tips to manage that process. All right, so let's first of all start with what is the Common App. So this is the online application platform that allows students to apply to multiple colleges, up to 20 in fact. And you're going to fill out the application form with your personal information, including information about your family, academics, extracurriculars, testing scores, and essays to submit to multiple colleges. And that's going to be the primary part of the Common App that I'm going to walk through in greater detail in a little bit later into this webinar, just to show you how to write those pages so you've done them well to submit to all the colleges you're applying to. Now, the Common App is used by over 1,100 colleges. That includes all of our 12 Florida State universities and many of our private universities, those 8 Ivy League schools, so many of those schools that you've heard of, those highly rejectives, to far less selective schools. And indeed, many colleges are exclusive users, which means the Common App is the only way to which you can apply to that college. Not on the Common App is Georgetown for this year, MIT, and the California schools, so University of California and the Cal State schools. So if any of those schools are on your list, you will have to apply using their platforms. Now, Common App has been around for a long time. It's about 40 years old. Started by 15 forward-thinking universities who wanted to simplify the college admissions process. And certainly it is a very popular platform, in part because so many colleges are utilizing the Common App. for students to apply. Those numbers keep bumping up a little bit each year to year with more students using it, more applications filed. The Common App goes live every year on August 1st. So we talk about this term rollover. So my seniors in tonight's audience, chances are if you had started your Common App prior to August 1st, when you opened it up August 1st onward, you noticed there was a little difference between the user interface from the previous version and the current, but it's actually relatively minor. If I have any juniors or younger students in the audience tonight, if you're intending to create your Common App before your senior year, which we usually recommend, usually we suggest juniors create a Common App account towards the end of their junior year in high school. All of the information on those 7 My Common Application page, profile, family, education, testing, activities, writing, and courses and grades will save as part of the rollover. And other application pages, including recommendation pages, the college-specific pages, if a college utilizes a writing supplement page, those will not save during the rollover. The Common App has also got a lot of really cool features. You can create your college list and do some initial college research. I'm going to show you that. And one of the things that you'll notice on each college on its overview page is you'll have access to its social media, financial aid, admissions office. There's a really cool application requirements grid. I'm going to show you that as well. It's also one of the downloads for tonight's meeting. You will likely request your letters of recommendation and transcript using the Common App. You can see your application status, and you can also get some financial aid and scholarship information. Again, I just mentioned, so seniors, while you were sleeping between July 31st to August 1st, your Common App rolled over, and everything that you entered prior to August 1st, as long as it was under the My Common Application tab, saved, along with your college list. So if you added in any colleges, those will also save. What doesn't roll over is if you signed your FERPA, if you added any recommenders, you're going to have to re-answer those or re-enter those. Likewise with the college's own questions. All right, so let's get started. So seniors, if you haven't created your Common App, I invite you to follow along with me. One thing, and this is just something that when I'm meeting with my own students, I'm like, email is going to become your best friend throughout the college application process. And we know sometimes it can be tough to remember to check those emails. So a great suggestion that we have and that our students find is really helpful is creating a separate email account for college applications and any related other sites or platforms. So like the STARS, the college applicant portals, your College Board account, your ACT account, anything related. Make sure it's professional sounding. So it shouldn't be, sparklycat7@aol.com. Let's make it kathy.hart2026@gmail.com. One thing that I find it's helpful, and this was actually something that when my own kids were going through the process a few years ago, with that dedicated email, the parents had access to that account. Not that we were sitting there and reading their emails, but it doesn't hurt to have a second set of eyes, especially you don't want your student to miss out on something important that may come through email. You're going to create a password using the parameters listed on my screen. And again, do save your email and password. We do know devices automatically do so. You have, I use Chrome, so there's a keychain that saves all my passwords. But for something that's very important, I'm also going to write it down and save it in a safe place. And students, we recommend that you share this information with your parents, guardian, another adult that might be working with you on your applications. And again, you can start early. Right now, Common App opened up a couple weeks ago. Juniors, it might be a little bit early for you to start your Common Apps, but certainly, by the end of, towards the end of your second semester, that's always a good idea. Some important conversations to have before you start entering information into the Common App. You will need to talk to your parents about, first of all, their education, their occupation, a good email, a good phone number for them, knowing where they went to college, when they earned their degree, what degrees they earned, and I'll show you that on the Common App. Also, it's important, students, to discuss your college list with your parents, making sure that it is a balanced list, right? So you're not applying to all these schools that are super, super selective, making sure that you've got a nice balanced college list. And of course, an important part of those college discussions, college applications discussions, are going to be financial aid and affordability. So making sure you've had those conversations and continue to have those conversations throughout the college application process. Little tip here, it seems common sense, but it's easy to overlook. I think because we create so many online accounts, we kind of become immune to them. But just make sure as you're filling in all those fields on the Common App that you're spelling things correctly, that you're checking capitalization of proper nouns, of names of streets, etc. And do definitely, before you hit submit, go through every single page and make sure all looks good. Required fields are starred, but nothing is truly optional except for the challenges and circumstances. Short response, I'll show you and explain why. And you're going to see, as you complete pages and sections, you're going to see a little green check mark. It's actually more like a green dot with a check mark in the middle. And that way you'll know that you completed a particular page. Other tips to know. We know many of our students just went back to school this week. A few other students might have a couple weeks left of summer vacation, but definitely something, if you haven't requested it yet, this is something great to have in front of you, is a copy of your transcript, or perhaps an online version of your transcript. You will want to know your GPA, weighted and or unweighted. What is your class rank if your school reports it? How many students are in your graduating class? You will need to know the name of your school-based counselor and his or her email. That is important. You'll need to know your senior year class schedule, first and second semester. And as you're going through the Common App, and I'll show you this on a couple of pages, to go back and easily check data as you enter it in, you can click on that preview button at the top right hand and it shows everything really quickly. All right, creating an account. So if you haven't created an account, what you want to do is go to Common App and you're going to land on a screen that looks like this. And in that upper right-hand corner, you're going to see create an account and you're going to click on it. Now, students applying to college as first-time in college students, you are going to select that first year button right there. That is going to help you create the correct Common App account. If you are already in college and you want to transfer to another college, you will select transfer student. Educational professionals and parents, by the way, if you want to create your own Practice Common App account, you certainly may. Actually, when we view the Common App walkthrough, when I do the live one, I'm actually going to be showing you my professional account, my practice account. It does everything except send an application. All right, so students, when you're going through and creating your account, make sure you have that good email set up, that good professional sounding email. Save that password. And then make sure for your first and last name, make sure that is your legal name. So for instance, everyone calls me Kathy. I've been Kathy for, many, many decades now, but my legal name is Catherine. So, just make sure, students, the first and last name that appear, on your transcript, on other accounts, is the same one that you put on the Common App. There will be a place for you to include a nickname or another first name should you desire. You're going to be inputting your phone number, your address, and then you're going to answer a few privacy questions. And then you are going to have a Common App account. So congratulations. Now, you are going to get an email from Common App. As soon as you create your account, I would recommend saving this. So, maybe putting a little star next to it. I know I use Gmail. I use the web version to check my email. So I'll create labels and I'll call things, college or Common App. And as I kind of start hearing from my colleges I'm applying to, I might create a different label for each of those schools. And then parents can help you set that up, students, if you have any questions. But that way you don't need to worry about like missing any emails as they come in. Again, save your Common App ID, save your username, write down that password, and then you're good to go. All right. I'm just going to show you some quick screenshots of the Common App, but like I said, I'm going to move into my own account to kind of show you how things work. So every time you log into the Common App, you are going to land on your dashboard, and you're going to see there are two elements of your dashboard here. You're going to see the My Common application. Those are those 6-7 pages. You enter that information once for the most part. And each time you submit to a college, that information along with the college's own questions, that's found under here, under My Colleges, that's what's going to go to each college. So that's going to be your dashboard page. And then you can click on My Colleges and you can see your entire list of colleges. And as you start entering in information, those deadlines will appear. The My Common application are those application pages with their data entry fields common to all your colleges. So the first page is called Profile. It is information about you, the applicant. The second section or tab or page, however you want to call it, is Family. That is information about any parents, step-parents, siblings, whoever you, the student, live with. The Education page is going to ask you questions about where you attend high school, where you may have attended high school, information about classes, grades, etc. Testing is going to be if you wish to self-report any tests like your SAT, ACT, AP subject tests. The Activity page is where you're going to input your extracurricular activities. So those are basically when you think about like, what do I do outside of the classroom, whether it's school clubs or clubs affiliated with other communities that you may be a part of. This is going to be the place to enter that. Writing is a spot for your essay. And then courses and grades, depending on your college list, you may not have to complete this section. I'll show it to you in a few moments just so you can see what it looks like. And then the college pages, so this is that tab, it's a little graduation cap there, is the pages with all the college specific questions. Many of these are going to be drop downs. Some might be actually free response essays, otherwise known as essays. And this is where you will input or you'll answer all the colleges you're applying to questions. What's really cool is every time you go to that college, we always say, start on the college information page, because that's going to have all those updated deadlines, those links to the college website, admission site, financial aid. You want to do a virtual tour. And then it's also going to give, in many instances, additional details about the application process specific to that school. And you're going to have questions like, when do you want to start? Are you going to apply with or without test scores for a test optional school? Where would you like to live on campus your first year? And then lastly, as you can see on my screen here, so see those little, the green dots, so those check marks there. Once I've completed my entire My Common application tab questions, and then I complete a college's own questions, that means that now I am able to submit. And you only submit, by the way, this is a question that we get pretty often, and it's a good one, is, do I submit to all, 10 colleges at once or 15 colleges at once? No, you don't. You're going to submit to one college at a time, and it's a 3-step process. You'll review your application, you'll sign and date it, you'll make your payment, if you have to pay a fee, and then you will then check off some certification boxes, that you've done your own work, etc. And then away it goes, and you get some like cool virtual confetti at the end. I don't know. I always like that part. So just families, if you wanted to grab a screenshot of this slide here, This shows you all the information you need to know for those 6 pages. I didn't include courses and grades, but those 6 pages of the My Common Application tab. So that way, if you are like, oh, gee, I don't remember if I got my senior year schedule yet, or, I'm not sure, if mom and dad even went to college. If you wanted to, kind of do a little bit of your research ahead of time, you certainly could. And by the way, and I'll highlight a couple areas where students may want to do this, but you can make changes to those main pages, those My Common Application pages, after submitting to one college and before submitting to the next. So sometimes this is done probably. The area that we tend to see our students use this is like if maybe they're sharing test scores with one college, but maybe they're not sharing test scores with another. So they may want to go onto that testing page and remove those test scores before they submit to that test optional school. I'm going to talk more about additional information. I think this is a really kind of cool spot on the Common App under the writing page, where if there's any of you're going to be supplying a lot of information as part of just that common area of the application. But if there's anything that is missing that you didn't get asked about that you feel is important to your application, this page will be where you'll do it, and I'll show you that in a few moments. Then a few other of those tabs there, you're going to see the college search. And then there is also a financial aid tab where you can see any scholarships and get more information about need-based financial aid. Now, by the way, if you are applying for need-based financial aid, that is separate from the Common App. So that form, usually most colleges require, I think, and nearly everyone requires the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That opens up in October. And then some other colleges, if you are applying for need-based financial aid, you may have to fill out additional forms. And then if you're interested in pursuing scholarships, the Common App will search up some scholarships. Now you're not, being given a scholarship award, but you'll be given some more information should you like to apply for this scholarship. All right, so we are going to start with the college search and list creation. And I am going to go over here. Oh, and I just saw my first chat. Is the webinar available for replay? Absolutely. Yes, we will have that available. And we're also going to have those nice hyperlinks in there so you can easily access any pieces that you may have missed or parts you may have missed. All right, I'm going to go into my Common App here. And let's see, let me just make sure you all can see it. Yes, you can. Excellent. All right. So I am starting with the college search page. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a tour around here is you've got basically 3 panes, right? The center pane, that's where I'm doing my, data entry. The left side, these are all of those tabs, My Common Application, My Colleges, College Search. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you direct admissions or financial aid this evening, but we're going to start with College Search. And you always have this help and support pane available to you. There are usually FAQs here, that are going to be common to that particular page that you are on. And you can certainly, type your own questions in, and then it'll bump you to the Common Apps resource page. All right, so let's look at the college search here. So I've got 1,142 results. So chances are I probably have a good idea. I'm not starting with, 0 ideas. So probably the way that most students are going to, search for a college is they're going to type in Florida. So let me hit return there. And you can see here on my screen that every college with Florida in its name is going to pop up. Now I've already got a few of those on my colleges, but I didn't do FSU. So I'm going to click plus and add. So that's great. So now I've got FSU on my college list. Don't worry, I'm going to show you that in a few moments. And you can actually, I think a lot of students, either they know the name of the college, you can search by, the city, pretty common searches, But there's actually a lot more filters, which I find I always kind of, even sometimes I forget about these. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, these are really cool. Um, so let's say I, am a student and I know I don't want to go too far from home. So let's say I want to stay, I don't know, within 100 miles of my zip code. I'm going to put in the zip code for Palm Beach Gardens. And let's see, 100 miles. Oh, not community colleges. Oh, good. Perfect. So here we go. So I've now got 14 colleges that are within 100 miles of my zip code. So let me pop over here. And here they all are. So I got some schools, in Southeast and Southwest Florida. There's FAU. There's Lynn University. So let me just show you this. So let's say I've heard of a school, but before I add it to my list, I might want to do a little research. So I click on Lynn University, and I'm going to get that same information that I get on a college's overview page. And it's going to include those same links. So I can see the website link, the admissions link, financial aid, if I want to take a tour, get some, data from College Navigator. Oh, here are my deadlines. All right. Here's other deadline information. So I'm taking a look at this and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to add Lynn University to my list. So I'm going to click on add to my colleges and it will appear there. All right, let me go back in to college search. Let me remove that filter. So I'm going to clear the filter. And again, I'm not going to show you each of these features, but if you wanted to filter out like, I don't, maybe I'm a senior who's graduating in December. And so I only want to see colleges to which I could apply for a January start. Filter it that way. I can, search via deadlines. If an application fee poses a burden, I can search out for those colleges that don't require an application fee, regardless of students' financial situation. I really hate writing essays. I don't, but I can search out any colleges that either don't require the Common App essay or don't require any additional college-specific essays. But just a little tip: sometimes if they're optional, they're really not optional. Likewise, if I want to make sure I'm applying to only test optional schools that either do or do not require letters of recommendation, I can search that way. So, especially if you're a student that's still, narrowing down your college choices, take advantage of this page. This is pretty cool. All right. Up here on the right-hand side, and you'll see this both under that My Colleges tab and also under the college search, is you can click on the application requirements grid. And let me just pop over here. So I'm sharing that tab. And this is what the application requirements grid looks like. So this actually, the one that we downloaded the one with all colleges. So that is available to you tonight for all 1,100 plus colleges of the Common App if you wanted to scroll through them. And again, this is kind of actually one of those little things that even sometimes I forget you have access to. And I'm like, oh yeah, but this is really cool. Like this is really helpful. So I can kind of see, as I go through, what type of school is it? Is it co-ed? Is it women only? What are their deadlines for their different application plans? ED, binding early decision, early action, non-binding early notification. Does the school offer a second round of either binding or non-binding early action? What's that final date for either regular or rolling? What's the fee? Does it require the personal essay? Does it require courses and grades? Does it take a supplement? SR means slide room. You can read more about a college's, standard test requirements. Always verify, I would say, on the college's admission sites just to make sure it's 100% clear. There's information about what letters of recommendation are required. And since I'm probably not going to go through all 1,100 schools, I can filter by my colleges only as I've added colleges to my college list. So here you can see this is my complete college list. And I can easily scroll through it. I can compare deadlines. I can go ahead and download and save this, print out a copy, stick it on my fridge. So, me, mom, and dad, we're all on the same page when it comes to our to when things are due. So take advantage of this grid. Again, it's a neat little tool there that is available to you. All right. So moving back to the college search, I think I pretty much covered everything. And like I said, when you go into your dashboard and you see the My Common App and My Colleges, then you go into My Colleges, and now I can see, oh, there's Florida State. I just added that school in. There is, I should see Lynn. Maybe I missed it. Yep, there's Lynn. I just added that one in. So now I can see all of my colleges start to finish. All right. So good. Well, we're going to pick back up on the My Common Application tab, but I'm going to pop back over and give you some additional tips from the college search. All right. So again, I showed you there are quite a number of different ways that you can search out colleges. So again, if you're a student with like a very specific set of requirements, chances are there is a filter for that. And, as I showed you with Lynn University, you can review the college before you add it to your list. So if you want to do additional information, do some additional research, you got access to the same thing, to the same, site that you will want to actually add it to your college list. Now, the Common App only allows you to apply to 20 colleges maximum. You can add or remove colleges later. So, let's say I had, Florida State was on my list, and I decide later on I don't wish to apply there, and I just go and I just simply, click an X, and it's removed from my list. But I can't remove a college after its application has been submitted. So just to be aware of that. So once it's submitted, it's going in. If you need to make any changes to that application, after you've submitted it, you do so directly through the college. I just talked about the requirements grid. It is one of the downloads for tonight's presentation. And as you build your college list, you can download a grid specific to the schools on your list. All right, so now we're going to enter some information into the Common App, and we're going to start with the profile page. So let me pop over there. Oh, sorry, it looks like my screen popped out here. Sorry about that. Let me go over here. And let me go up here. All right, make sure that's showing. There we go. Okay, this is what you want to see. You just missed a couple of my slides, but this is actually what we want to see. All right. So when we are on the Common App, so let's see, on our personal information page, this is going to be all the information that pertains to you, the student. So the first page is going to be information about your name. So let's say, I've already put in, my first name is Kathy. Let's say, I wanted to go by, my nickname is Stinky. Then I'll start seeing down here every time I log in, welcome Stinky Heart. So maybe I'm going to stick with Kathy. But this can be, where if you wanted to, put in a nickname or another first name, this would be the place to do so. Same thing with if you had a previous name, a former first name, middle name, last name, you could do so there. You can add it in. Otherwise, most students will say no, but we do work with students, that have changed, different names for a number of reasons. Always verify that your date of birth is correct. And then to move from section to section, you can either click continue, and that's just going to jump you to the next page, or you can just click on the link directly there. I'm just going to use continue to show you all the pages. So you're going to verify that your permanent home address is correct. This is going to autofill after you enter in your you create your application, and then if that is your permanent address, you're not in a boarding school, you might not be residing elsewhere, you will put no alternate address, and then you'll click continue. And then you can see both of these, because I've completed them, you can see I've got that little green check. Contact details, again, students, This should be your cell phone number. If you wanted to add a landline or a parent's line, you're certainly welcome to. Otherwise, I'm going to say no other phone. Demographics is going to be pretty straightforward. All but one of those questions is optional, but we usually advise students, to answer, as much as they can. And by the way, just to the are you Hispanic or Latino, Latina, if this pertains to you, and this also includes if you are a student from Brazil, you would select what best describes your background. I'm going to go back up here and say no, and you'll notice that suppresses it. And then you'll give information again about your identity, and just answering a few questions there. Moving on to language, let me show you this, because this is actually one of the pages where sometimes students don't answer it completely. So if my first language is English, which it is in this case, and it's my only language, I'm just going to select one. And when I input English, all of these boxes are going to be unchecked. So if it is my first language, I also want to make sure that I check off these remaining boxes: speak, read, write, spoken at home, in addition to first language. Now, we work with many students who are bilingual, trilingual, which is really cool. So let's say I have 2 languages to report. So I've selected Spanish, and then I'm going to determine my level of proficiency. So let's say, I'm pretty fluent in Spanish. I'm in AP Spanish literature for high school. I've maybe traveled in Spain or another Spanish-speaking country. Maybe I have a grandparent who speaks Spanish, and I feel pretty confident that, I can speak, read, write it with proficiency. I will indicate that. Otherwise, if it's just one language, I'll just leave it as such. Geography and nationality, again, are going to be pretty straightforward. Students, you might have to ask your parents, if you were born in a different city from where you currently live. One of the things when you do answer the citizenship status, I'll just point out, the Common App does give you tips if you're not sure how to define U.S. resident. If you are a dual citizen, or hold multiple citizenships, when you select U.S. dual citizen, you can input your countries of citizenship. So maybe you're a dual citizen with Canada, but maybe you also happen to be a dual citizen of Andorra. I don't know. So you'll list those there. And again, so even though it says dual citizen, you can put in multiple countries. And then students, and again, this is a question, I always say, this is a question to chat about with mom and dad. If you are applying for financial aid, the Common App and the colleges do ask that you input your Social Security number here. It does get blocked out. And that way, that ensures that the colleges can match your financial aid application with your application for admission. And the Common App fee waiver, again, is pretty straightforward. You'll answer according to your family. If your family income falls within a certain range, you receive public assistance. You may qualify for no fees for your applications. And then same thing, this Use Strive as a mentor program, for students that might like a little additional support throughout the application process. So that takes us through the profile section. And let me go back over here and give you a few tips there. Let's see, this should hopefully share this time. Oh, good, it is. Okay, so the profile page, again, if you need it, know your Social Security number, know information about your citizenship, know if you're eligible for a fee waiver, do be honest about your ethnicity, respond yes to Hispanic if your origins are from anywhere or South or Central America, including Brazil. And for the first language, don't forget to check all those boxes: speak, read, write, spoken at home, in addition to first language. All right, so let me show you the family page. All right, so let me just show you these questions. Again, these are pretty straightforward. This is going to be information, students, that you are going to need your parents to ask you to fill, ask for their help to fill in. The household page, most students can answer this. They generally know what their parents' marital status is, with whom they live, and do you have any children? That refers to you, students, the applicants. And then let me just show you what those parent questions look like. A little tip here, because sometimes the colleges will ask in their own questions more information about parent one, parent two. So just make a note when, like, let's say I'm gonna, for tonight, I'm saying parent one is mom, parent two is dad. I'm not I don't have any step parents, so I won't be providing any information about them. But, just make sure you are consistent. So parent one is mom. If you get asked a question about parent mom on a college's own page, just remember, which one is parent mom. Just make a little note or go back to the Common App. You're going to be asked, information about, if your parent is living. You're going to provide information, your prefix, Dr., Mr., Ms., Mrs. in this case. Know your parents' given name. So again, the complete first name. Likewise with their last name. And then if your parents, so sometimes, moms, when they get married, they sometimes take their husband's family name. Sometimes they keep their own name, their maiden name. So, if they have a different former name, you can include that in here. Do you know your parents' email and cell phone? Again, sometimes colleges will, on their own pages, say, would you like us to also, email your parents, or contact your parents with information. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's always good. We talked about, checking those emails. And sometimes it's nice knowing that, the same email that you're getting, reminding you to, hey, Kathy, log into your applicant portal and, finish filling out your forms. Mom and dad will also get that same email. You're going to need to know some general information about your parents' occupation. So even over here on the help column here, the help pane here, it's thinking in broad terms. You'll need to know their employment status, whether or not they work at a university, and the highest education level. I think this is the one that probably takes the most time. So you get the highest level of education. So it ranges everywhere from none all the way through graduate school. And graduate school, by the way, includes medical school, law school, anything after the 4-year bachelor's degree. And then if, let's say, for instance, my mom here did not go to college, then I don't have to provide any other information about her education. But here she went to graduate school and she attended 2 institutions. And again, students, like, especially if you're planning to like fill out your Common Apps, maybe as part of like a boot camp that you're doing, with your high school or something, is write this information down if you want to complete it, independent of your family. You'll get the total number of institutions attended. You'll look up the college. I'm going to do here, I'll do University of Florida, pick that one. I'm going to select that. Oh, and by the way, if I typed in University of Florida and I did not see that name on the list, the college, I will be allowed to manually input it. So, and the Common App, you'd be surprised. It has a huge range of colleges, both in the US and outside of the US. So chances are your college, your parents' college will be on this list, but if it's not, they can provide that information. They can input it. So I'm going to select Florida right here. And then I'm saying, I earned my bachelor's degree from UF and I received it in 1997. And then I got my MBA from Florida Atlantic, so I also had to look up that, and I received that in 2010. So this is just definitely something, again, students, parents, sometimes it even takes parents a few minutes to kind of go back and be like, okay, I attended this college and this college, earned this degree and when. So just a little heads up the level of information that you will provide. And then parent two, you will be providing the same information. And by the way, if have limited information about the second parent, or you do not have another parent to list, you can select those too, because Common App understands that, every family is different. All right, moving over to the sibling page here. This is going to be straightforward. I'm going to say, I have one sibling. Her name is Liz. She has the same last name, and I don't know, she's 15. And then I just add that in, and it's very simple, which is nice. All right, so let's go back over here, and I'm going to give you some takeaways from the family page. And again, this should be pretty straightforward. But just making sure, again, students, that you ask your parents all that information, including your mom's maiden name, if that applies to you, and certainly, your family's highest education level, and if they attended a college or university, the degrees and the years. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's take a peek at education. All right, so the education page is going to be a lot of information that you, the student, will be providing. So let's start with the very first page here. So we see current or most recent secondary high school. So that's going to be students where you are currently attending. Now, if you're a class of 2026, and you only went to one high school, your dates of entry are generally going to be either August, September 2022, and whenever you're graduating, May or June 2026. Now, if you attended another high school, I'm going to show you that page next. If it's a boarding school, you'll say yes. And then if you had any changes in progression, so like if you graduated early, let's say, or you graduated late, or you're taking a gap year, some other kind of some other exception to kind of that standard, 4-year high school path. If those questions apply to you, it will open up this text box. You get 250 words just to explain those circumstances. Otherwise, if you are, completing high school in 4 years, then there will be no change in progression. All right. What about other secondary high schools? Oh, and by the way, I just thought of this. Sometimes we work with students that attend a high school or attend a school that's like a 6 through 12. So it's a middle and a high school. Or sometimes they even go to a school that's like a K through 12. The date of entry is going to be the date you started high school. So even if you started at your school, maybe in preschool, you're going to put in the date of entry is going to be your high school start date. So wherever, grade 9 or the equivalent. Other secondary high schools, so if you only attended one school, you're going to input 0. But let's say you attended another high school. Let's say, there's a couple different reasons. Many times students will switch high schools for a number of reasons. Maybe I started out at Jupiter High for a couple of years, and then I went to SCORE Academy for grades 11 and 12. Let's say, for instance, I am doing some classes at Florida Virtual. Let's see. And I'm not going there full time. I'm just, taking some of those additional classes. So I'm going to select Florida Virtual. And then I'm going to put in the dates. And again, sometimes, you kind of have to use your best judgment here. Maybe you took a, one Florida Virtual class your freshman year, maybe 2 your sophomore year. So again, use your best judgment. Maybe in my example here, maybe I took some classes my junior year. So maybe I did, a couple of online classes, and I finished up, say, in May. But the dates might vary because sometimes you might be taking like a class over the summer, for instance. And then you're going to notice again, if you answer, 1, 2, 3 to this question, you are going to get a text box, and you can, write in something like, I enriched my schedule with several FLVS classes that I was unable to take at my current high school. And, I would probably include the names of those classes. If it was something like I transferred schools, I would say, I attended, Jupiter High for the first 2 years. I felt that, being in a smaller environment would be better for my education. So I switched schools and then had a positive experience since, or something like that. Or, of course, many times it's just simply, students have moved, and that also results in a change of schools. Colleges and universities, again, if you've never taken a class at a college or university, you're going to answer 0. But, it's increasingly common that students will sometimes take a class, like a summer class at a college, or take some dual enrollment classes, right? So let's say I'm a student that's done some dual enrollment, and I'm going to type in the name of the college. I'm going to do Palm Beach State. And let's see, there it is, Palm Beach State College. I'm going to select continue. And then I'm going to indicate that it is dual enrollment with my high school. If it was like a summer program that didn't award credit, I would just label it as a summer program. So like, if I did like a special program up at FSU or UF during the summer, let's say I went to a college, I did a summer program, and I, received some credit from the college, but it's not appearing on my high school transcript. So it's not considered dual enrollment. I would also report that here. But let me go back over here. I'm just going to select dual enrollment. Same thing. I'm going to put the dates that I attended, that I took those dual enrollment classes. And this is the question that sometimes we get. A lot of times students are like, well, am I earning a degree? Most students aren't. And usually if you're like a student who's earning the concurrent, high school diploma, and either, a degree, or there are students, that are earning their bachelor's degree along with their high school diploma, you will typically know, you have to, meet a certain number of credit hours. Usually you're working with pretty closely with an advisor at your dual enrollment college. So if you're just taking a couple classes, like, sometimes we'll have students maybe take like a math class, or they might take a class of interest, like an intro to business class or something like that. So they're not going to check off that they received a degree. All right, the grades page here. So this is where you need to know your graduating class size. This is where it's good to have access to a copy of your transcript, or we know a lot of students have those online portals. Sometimes it's, SIS, sometimes it's a virtual counselor. They have a number of different names. So you're just going to go in and you're just going to report, whatever your graduating class size. By the way, colleges understand that can fluctuate a little. So, just report it, at the start of senior year. Maybe if you're applying to some colleges a little bit later in the cycle, like you have some regular, decision deadlines, so you're applying after January 1st, maybe that number might change, but, it's an approximate, graduating class size. If your school reports rank, you'll report it however it is. Most students who do have rank typically are seeing it as exact. So I'm going to, let's say, I'll bump myself up a little. I'm going to be 45. But if you don't have any rank, you just select none. And then you just have to know generally, but check with your school counselor. Generally, if you're receiving, waiting for those advanced classes, whether they're honors, AP, IB, ACE, etc., usually your rank is weighted too. But if you're not sure, check with your school counselor. This is an area where sometimes students do get a little bit stuck, is reporting the GPA. The GPA scale is different than the weighting that you get. So most students, and there are exceptions, but typically, and you can go back and kind of look at your unweighted GPA, Most students, especially here in the U.S. and in particular, I work with a lot of Florida students. So most of these high schools are using that 4.0 scale, right? An A is a 4, a B is a 3, C is a 2, D 1, F 0. So I'm going to select that. But sometimes students get a little confused and they're like, oh, but I can get up to a 5.0 if I take an AP class, or I can get up to like a 6.0 if I take like an IB class or something. But that's different from the scale. That's weighting. That's not the scale. The scale is that standard that's being used. When you go to self-report your cumulative GPA, you're going to do that one that's, the cumulative one that's typically at this point, at the start of your senior year is the average from 9th, 10th, 11th grade classes, maybe some middle school classes that you've taken. So you're going to report it in exactly. So I know some of our high schools have it like, 4 decimal places, report them all. And then you're going to select if that's a weighted GPA or an unweighted GPA. If you see both on your transcript, our recommendation is always report the highest or the higher of the two. And then you're going to click continue. And for current or most recent year's courses, so our advice is always to wait until after you have your senior year's schedule finalized. Now, things can change. We know that. And I know, for instance, some high schools will do an add drop period. So, you might be trying out this one class, but if it doesn't end up being a good fit for you, you have a couple of weeks to change it. This is all editable, by the way, but I always think it's a little easier, just kind of to do things when you know they're pretty much complete. So when you enter in your classes, you're going to get a drop-down menu, and just make sure when you're counting up the total number of classes, don't forget those second semester classes. Like, it's pretty common that students will take like a, first semester government class and then take a second semester economics class, even though they might stay in the same classroom with the same teacher, and the same classmates. Those are still 2 separate classes. So make sure to count them accordingly. You're going to use the course scheduling system your institution is using. So again, how do those final grades appear? I've used semester here. And then how we recommend students report those courses and grades is going to be starting with the core. So those are those academic classes. So we always like to start with English, math, science, history, social sciences. So that's kind of a broad array that includes like psychology and economics, government, along with your history classes, world language, any AP or other advanced electives, and then other regular, electives. And so what you're going to do, so for instance, here I've got my English. I'm taking AP English Literature and Composition. You're going to select the level here. And you can choose, if ACE is the ASA level Cambridge, AP is AP, dual enrollment. You've got your honors here, IB. If you were, well, actually, most seniors are in full IB classes. And a good rule of thumb is, even if a course is regular standard, we usually recommend select college prep, because chances are that is a class that is preparing you for college. You'll select the schedule. So of course, my English class, most of my academic core classes are going to be full year. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same for math. Now, math allows you to actually pick this specific math course, and say I were doing something like statistics, I would select math other. So I'm going to put an AP statistics, spell everything out, watch for that capitalization, all that good stuff. Remember, this is a professional document. Same thing, it's going to be full year. Let's see, my course 3 subject, I'm going to do my science. I'm going to make myself a bit of a smarty pants here. I'm doing AP biology. I'm selecting AP. And it is full year. Awesome. Now I come to my history social science. So I'm taking AP comparative government and politics. That's my first semester class. My second semester class is going to be AP macroeconomics. And I put it there. And let's say let's see, what am I going to do? I'm going to stick with my world language. I'm going to be taking Spanish. I'll do Roman numerals if that's up here. Honors. I'll select honors here. And that's also a full year class. So, oh, and one little thing, it's funny because I've just had these conversations with a few of my students over the last week when they've been adding in their senior year schedules. AP Economics has two different classes, macro or micro. So if you're not sure which one you're taking, and especially second semester, sometimes it doesn't show up on that, piece of paper you get back to school. Do confirm with your teacher. Sometimes it appears like, if you have your complete course listing somewhere in your portal, you might find it there. So good. And just a couple other just kind of little tips for your course input. If you do need to make a change to your senior year classes after you've submitted to the colleges on your list, what you're going to need to do is you should go ahead and notify the colleges directly that there's been a change in schedule. Because you can edit the Common App before you send it, but if you've already sent it to a college, if you make any changes, it's not going to automatically change for those colleges to which you've already submitted. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk about honors here. Honors are going to be academic honors. So they're going to be things like AP Scholar, if you're an ACE diploma recipient, an IB diploma candidate, if you got like a special book award, if you're a member of an honors society. Any honors that are associated with an activity are going to be included on the activity page. And then if you're taking any honors classes or AP classes, that's not an honor. That's just, a very good level of classes, but you're not going to list those separately. So just to kind of give you an idea, by the way, this box here, this text box is 100 characters with spaces. So that's pretty generous. And I'll show you a little kind of trick in case you've got more than 5 honors, but some of them are related. So here I am, I'm an IB diploma candidate. I'm going to get that awarded usually upon completion of my grade 12 requirements. It's usually recognized by my school. It's also international. Oh, so here we go. So I earned the AP Scholar twice. So I earned it the first time in 10th grade when I got my AP scores, and then I got the AP Scholar with distinction in 11th grade. So what I can do is I could certainly, if I, have space to do so, I could certainly have these, as 2 separate awards, but I want to combine them. Again, I've got space to do so. And I just break them out. AP Scholar with distinction is 11. AP Scholar is 10. I check off the 2 years, and it's a national award. So that can be a little tip. If you've got a ton of awards, you can consolidate them. There's also the additional information section. So more on that later. Same thing. So I've got my National Honor Society. I've got my ACE diploma with merit. Oh, and here's what I can do. Again, because you notice here, I've, in addition to being inducted into the National Honor Society, I've also been invited to join numerous other honor societies in my high school. And so I don't have the space to list them all out separately. So what I can do, again, you got those 100 characters with spaces, is I'm combining them, and maybe I might put them in order. So I might have actually bumped, English up to the top, and I'm putting the dates in which I joined. These would probably actually be, I would want to put like math 10 through 12. I probably want to put history 11 through 12. Communication would be 12. English through 12. Oh, good, and it fits. By the way, if you're kind of, if you're combining awards and you've got that limited space, what we usually recommend is like you start a doc and you can add those to the doc, and then you can just, check the word count just to make sure it fits. And then you could abbreviate accordingly. I could do ENG for English, COMM for communications, HIST for history if I needed to. And then I can check off the boxes here. And then I could put school because there's probably a school chapter. Maybe I'm involved with that chapter. And then I can select national there. All right, CBOs, you would answer yes to this question if you are working with a group that's providing you free assistance with your application process. So something like a Boys and Girls Club, for instance. Otherwise, you'll answer 0. And then for future plans, just verify that this is, applying as a first-year student and plan to start college in 2025 or 2026. And then for the highest degree you intend to earn, don't be afraid to be ambitious. So at the very least, most of you are going to be using the Common App to apply for that first degree, your bachelor's degree. But certainly, if you aspire to be a physician one day or an attorney, or let's say you're really, excited about being a business major, you can certainly pick a degree that is related to that area of interest, that career academic interest. And I promise you, if you change your mind, no one's going to go back and find your Common App and say, hey, Kathy, you said you were going to get an MBA and you actually ended up getting an MA. What? But do aim high, be ambitious, and do make sure when you select your career interest, make sure it's in alignment with the major choice. So, here I am, I'm an aspiring business executive. So I'm going to select that there. But, if you're kind of scrolling through these choices and none of them match, you can type in other. And sometimes I'll have students who like, if they have a really specific career, kind of track, like they know they want to be like a dermatologist, or, they kind of have a very specific sort of field that they want to go into. That's perfectly fine to label it. And it's okay, by the way, to be undecided. That is a choice, and that's okay to answer it that way. All right, so let's go back over here. Let me give you a few takeaways from this section. All right, so the education page, again, don't forget your date of entry is going to be when you started high school. Here's another way you could write if you were taking some courses for enrichment at another school, like a Florida virtual school or another online. I enhanced my sophomore year curriculum by taking AP World History through Florida Virtual School. Colleges and universities, I think that should be pretty straightforward. You'll just indicate whether it's dual enrollment or credit or non-credit outside class, like a summer class. Grades, the GPA scale, that's going to be a 4.0 for most of you. If you're not sure, do check with your school counselor. Self-report that weighted GPA. And wait until senior year to enter in your GPA and class rank, because usually that's calculated and updated over the summer. So if you're not 100% sure, is it final yet? Do check with your school counselor, or, request a copy of your transcript and verify that what appears on there is what's going to go to the college. Again, just make sure your senior year classes. Try to have, that schedule as final as possible. If you do need to make changes after you apply, you notify the colleges directly, and do indicate college prep or higher level, not regular. And then I just showed you, and here's another great way to do it. Let's say I want to group NHS in with those 4 other honor societies. Here is how I can do so, as actually I could say National Honor Societies and do NHS and the years, Spanish, Mu Alpha Theta. I think I showed you, I said math on my version, English, and Psi. I had to abbreviate because I ran out of space there. So you can get a little bit creative. Again, use a doc if you need to kind of consolidate some awards together, just so before you add it to the Common App, the spacing is okay. And again, just make sure that when you are, adding your future plans in, be ambitious, make sure it's in alignment with the major. And this is where sometimes this might change from college to college. Let's say for most colleges, you're going to be applying, something business related. But let's say you fell in love with this other school and they got a fabulous education degree, and you're like, I could see myself, majoring in education and becoming a teacher here. So I just want to make sure that before I apply to that college that I'm indicating an interest in an education major, that I go back to that future plans and update accordingly. All right, let's talk about the testing page. And I apologize. It seems like it just kicked off my screen share there. So I do apologize. Let's go back into the testing page. And let's go into testing. Make sure that is showing. Yeah, I don't know why. Sometimes my slides haven't been showing, but it looks like they are, and then they're not. So, all right, but this is the important stuff here. So let's talk about testing. So give it a second here to load. All right, so this is going to be where you can self-report your ACT, SAT, AP, IB, ACE, any, IELTS, Duolingo English test. This can be the place where you can self-report those. I'm just going to check here. Now, for many of you, you can simply answer no to this question. If you think you're going to be going mostly test optional to colleges, maybe you're not sure yet. Maybe you know that most of the colleges on your list, either want like an official set of scores or or want you to self-report, outside of the application. It's fine to say no, and then just make sure if you are submitting scores to a college that you are doing something like, sending an official score report or, following the instructions otherwise. But many students will choose to report tests. So in this case, I'm going to pick two common ones, AP and ACT, just to show you what that looks like. And if you're an international applicant, by the way, you would answer yes or no to this question. If you're not an international student, just leave this unanswered. This doesn't pertain to you. All right, so let me show you AP subject tests first, and then I'm going to pop back and do ACT. All right, so the number of AP tests that you wish to report, you should include the tests that you expect to take. So that means, let's say I'm going to self-report. I took 2 AP exams in this past May, and I'm going to report my art history, my US history. Let's say I got, a 3 on one, a 4 on another. Then I have this whole series. You all saw my senior year list there, class list, right? I'm planning to take, many more AP exams. So what I've done here is I've put the date that are taken and planned. Oh, and by the way, this is a little tip too. I don't think I mentioned earlier, but anytime you have to enter in a date, sometimes they want it numeric. Sometimes they just want month and year. Sometimes they want month, date, year. I always tell students, just use the calendar icon, and then it's very easy. So here, because I have these future AP exams, so I've got May 2026, I'm going to take English literature. Notice I don't have a score yet. I can complete this section without reporting a score. Same thing, I think, let's see, I know I switched it to statistics. I should be able to find that. Perfect. I don't have a score yet because I'm going to take that test May 2026. And then I can continue to add AP scores. Now, a question, and this will be the same also like if you're taking IB exams. So many students won't take those final IB exams until the end of their senior year, so they may not have IB results to report, but they should certainly list those future exams. Also, sometimes there's a question like, what score should I submit for like an AP exam? Certainly don't submit any 1s or 2s. Then it's really going to all depend about 3s. Many colleges will award college credit for 3s. So certainly if you've got a lot of those colleges on your list, include that 3 result. Many highly selective colleges really it's in your best interest to only self-report fours or fives. So, this would also be a page that I might, remove. I might only report, let's say I'm reporting, a three because to my less selective schools, but then I got a few highly selectives. So what I might do is I might go back and edit this page and I might switch it to four. And then I just would remove the art history. I might replace it with one of my intended AP tests. So just use your best judgment there. Again, usually you can go to the colleges. Usually they have like an AP credit, IB credit, and you can see, at what level they start awarding college credit. And usually that's a good rule of thumb there. All right, for ACT tests. So what you can do here is you're going to get, you can kind of, before you submit is you can kind of, check out, there's a number of variations here. So for some students, they are simply not reporting any past ACT scores. But let's say they're intending to take, a test. Let's see, they're going to do one in September, and then they're going to do one again in October. So perfect. That just lets the colleges know so you can apply to a college before you have a score in hand. You just want to make sure if a college requires scores or you're intending to send a score, that you get it to the college by that deadline. Deadlines are very important in the college admissions process. But let's say here, I'm just going to smooth this back to 0. Let's say I took one ACT and I received like all of my best scores on a single exam. But for fun, we'll do 2. So let's say I got my highest composite score was a 34, and I got that in June 2025. I think that was actually it might have been on the 14th. Not that it really matters for my purposes, but for you students, you want to make sure it's optional. So let's say my math, I also got a 34, and maybe I also earned that in June. So the ACT science scores, I'm sure you probably heard, has become optional, but that's not true for every college on your list. So this will, students, you may need to do some research. Certainly, we still encourage our students to take ACT science, especially if you are a student interested, in studying science or a related field in college. And, if you've got a science score that you're proud of, like let's say, oh yeah, I gave myself a 33, maybe I'll bump it to a 32. And let's say I took that back in April. Yeah, I would definitely want to report it. If I'm not sure of the college's policy, definitely, reach out to the college and find out. But, if you've taken it and you've done well on it, it certainly, certainly will not hurt you in the application process. Let's see, for English, I'm going to give myself a 33. And let's say I also earned that 33 in April. And what did I say? It was April 5th there. I think it was actually the 12th, but that's okay. And then my highest reading score, let's say I got a 34, and that was back in June. So you notice here that I am reporting, and I don't think anyone takes the writing anymore. Very few colleges require it. So you can easily answer no to that question. And so just notice here, if I'm reporting scores from different testing dates, I'll just put the corresponding number of testing dates and then just make sure, oh yeah, I reported my scores from June and I reported my scores from April. And you'll do something similar for the SAT. And that one's a little bit more straightforward because you're only reporting reading and math. Whereas with the ACT, you have upwards of 5 scores, but really only 4: English, math, reading, and science. All right. So good. All right. And like I said, you can change this if you go back over here and let's say I don't want to report my, my ACT scores. When I go ahead and I click no, let me show you the preview feature. I can see there are no test scores to report. So I've hidden all my test scores. Let's say I want to report my AP subjects, but I want to remove my ACT for a certain school. Let me go up here. We should be able to see it. Ta-da! You only see the AP subject tests. My ACT scores have been suppressed. All right, so I think that's it for testing. All right, let me make sure my slideshow is working, and I apologize there that it wasn't earlier. And let me just go through a couple of these screens and just make sure you go. Okay, so now we're seeing them. Perfect. All right, so just a few takeaways on the testing page. It's up to you whether or not you want to report those scores, and you can change your responses between submissions, sharing your scores with some colleges and not. Just be aware that not every college will pull the scores from the Common App. Some colleges still want that official score report. Others still might like it another way, like self-reported on their own site. AP scores, and IB scores too, ACE, you'll only self-report those, and you'll only send official score reports to the college that you are attending. Again, just a good rule of thumb, no 1s or 2s for APs, 3s, 4s, or 5s for moderately selective colleges, 4s or 5s for highly selective colleges, and do list those future tests. All right, let's go over here. All right, let me show you the activities page here. All right, so the activities page. All right, so this is another, in addition to any writing associated with the Common App, this is probably one of the longest sections to fill out. This, by the way, is one of the handouts that we included on our downloads. And there are I believe two handouts. One just gives you some general tips for activities. The other gives you like kind of a step-by-step how-to. So let me just show you here. So what you don't want to do, I mean, unless there is a true, reason for it. Sorry, my screen doesn't appear to be sharing again. Hold on, let me just clear that and let me go back in and reshare it. I apologize. And good. Okay, so now we're back on the activity. Sorry, I'll check back every so often. For some reason, it isn't holding the share. But so when you are, so you really want to make sure you are including some activities on your Common App. And remember, you want to think outside the box, right? Not every high school, provides or offers a broad array of clubs or extracurriculars. Many students are participating in activities outside of their high school. This could include volunteering in your community, work helping out in your faith-based community, holding a job, any family responsibilities. So let me show you the activities here. Let me go to yes here. Make sure that is sharing. Perfect. Good. All right. So let's scroll down here. What we recommend doing for the activities page is starting with a resume. It's a great tool to have, a great document to have. It makes writing the activities page really straightforward and direct. And also, and I'm going to show you when I show you one of the college's own pages, that it does, you might be allowed to upload a copy of your resume. So let me just show you here a couple of the activities that I input. So here this is my first activity. I have a job. This is my job title. You get 50 characters. The organization name is Buffalo Wild Wings, Jupiter, Florida. And these are my duties. And notice these are pretty much drawn directly from a resume. You can kind of hear it in the language because these are all these active verbs. Process payments, ensure quality customer service and order accuracy, answer phones and take orders, collaborate with staff to complete all tasks on time. And notice, so I've got, and what I like to do, and students can do it a number of ways, is I like to do, or we like to do, semicolons, kind of that takes the place of of bullet points, that you might see in a resume. You're going to check off the grades, the timing of participation. So if it's only during school break, it's like a summer job, I'm only going to select school break. If it's something I do, both in the summer, winter break, and during the school year, I will select all year. Then I'm going to put down my hours spent per week, and then my weeks spent per year. And then usually for this question, I intend to participate in a similar activity in college. You usually want to answer yes to some of these, especially things that are like, if you do a lot of volunteer work in high school, chances are you're probably going to do some volunteer work or something similar in college. Same thing with a job. If you've worked in high school, or maybe you've held a summer job, you may end up working in college, or you might have an internship. So, and usually it's good, especially for those activities that come at like the top of your list. Do make sure that those are probably going to be the ones that you're going to participate in. Let me show you another example. Let's see here. So we got activity type, we got journalism, publication. So this is my student here is a Score Academy yearbook editor, writer, and photographer. So again, you get 50 characters. So if you've held multiple positions, again, you might end up using some creative abbreviation, but you can fill in that space there. And again, very similar language to the description of the paid work. Mastered publication aspects. Photograph all school events. Same thing. I've checked off all grade levels. I've checked off my timing. Now, this was a school year involvement. So for the school year activities, generally you kind of think about like, so a school year, and it can vary a little, I know, but usually, 36 weeks is a full year, 18 weeks a semester, 9 weeks a quarter. And that can help you sometimes gauge the time commitment, especially if you're like a student that might be working on like a seasonal activity, right? Like sports, or, maybe like the school play, the musical theater production. That will be, you can kind of use that as a rule of thumb. There's 52 weeks in the year, by the way, if you're doing something year round, but that might, you might not be doing something every week out of the year. One of the things, I'm just going to show you this as a little example of what you don't want to do, but when we start working with students, sometimes if they've already started filling out the Common App, this is what we see. So let's say I have a high achieving athlete. She plays on the lacrosse team. She's the captain. She's a starting midfielder, and this is what we get in the description. So definitely, you can certainly go through and select, the activity type. And again, it can be art, it can be career oriented. Here it was athletics. Let me switch it back to athletics varsity. You're going to see this nice drop down menu. You can select the team if it's an athletic event or an athletic commitment. You can usually, fill in the position and the organization, but do spend some time really elaborating on what you've done and the impact that you have. If you are, and don't overlook too, like a lot of times students think, oh, I have to have a leadership title in order to be a leader. But don't, you could be that kid who is, the one in your group who's the one who's always like, sending those, group reminder texts. You're the one who's setting up the team dinners. You're the one that's always bringing, I don't know, donuts to the Friday morning meeting. I don't know, something like that. Think about those ways in which you contribute and how you have an impact on that group. You're going to organize your activities in order of meaning. And you can use these arrow keys to bump things down. So let's say that I feel that my editor position is more important than, say, my paid work. I can do that. Let's say I wanted to think my lacrosse equipment lacrosse commitment, is more important than my work. I can bump it up, and then I'll be sure to write in a nice description. And like I said, we have a couple handouts in the downloads that will give you some further guidance. Responsibilities and circumstances, just making sure, good, you guys can see this one. This is a new page on this year's Common App. So my seniors, if you started filling out your activities over the summer, you did not see this page. You're simply going to, this is a checklist. If you check one of these boxes, you don't have to provide any additional details. So you can go through, if you work for a family business, you're not being paid. Maybe you're responsible for a younger sibling. If you're working at a job and you're contributing to your family's income, so they're dependent on your income for your family's income. Again, just go through each of these and check off the ones that pertain to you. If none do, you just simply select none of these. Likewise, these are some hardships as well that students may face throughout high school, and you can certainly check these, either answer, truthfully to your situation or select none of these and move on. All right, good. So let me go ahead. Let me pull up. I'll give you a few more tips. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try sharing this way. So hopefully we don't lose my slideshow there. That seems to be kind of the issue here. So the takeaways for the activities page. Oh, and one thing I didn't point out is sometimes students see you're able to add up to 10 activities and they think, oh my gosh, I have to add in all 10. No. Fewer is always better, and colleges are really looking for that depth of involvement, the impact that you had. If you did, which is very common, let's say you joined the JV cheerleading squad, in 10th grade and, did it for one season and never did it again. That's probably not going to go on your resume. It's probably not going to go on your activities page. Really hone in on those activities that really showcase, maybe it's a leadership commitment, a commitment to your family, the fact that you've been playing, a sport for, many, many years, including all 4 in high school. And middle school activities do matter only if continued well into high school. Again, I gave you the breakdown of, the number of, characters with spaces that you have to write the activities page, including the position leadership description, the organization name, and the activity description. Again, you'll find this all in our download. Double check the time commitments, by the way, like the weeks per year, hours per week. Colleges know that it's not going to be like the exact perfect number because things can vary. One week you might be meeting for 3 hours. The next week you might be meeting for 10. Most students will do an average and go from there. Let's see. Again, we've got our activities tips. And of course, you're going to, put the activity that's the most meaningful at the top of your list, and then in decreasing order of importance to you. All right. Let's talk about the writing page. This is one of my favorite pages. And let me go over there. And I'm going to show you the 2 pages on writing. So first of all, we've got the personal essay. I'm not really going to talk about the essay. Actually, Ellen Valadares and I, a couple weeks ago, just a little 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did a webinar that you can watch the recording that was all about the Common App personal essay, and we did touch upon supplemental essays. But let me just show you just kind of, sort of a little bit of the mechanics of this page, as it were. Once your essay is done and proofread and reviewed, what you want to do is you want to go up here when you copy it into the Common App, and you're going to put it in this text box here, and you're going to go up and you're going to select preview. Just verify. This is the format that you want. It's the block formatting. It's kind of nice, neat, clean. You don't need to indent. So this is not like an MLA formatted essay. Excuse me. Just make sure that the spacing looks good. It used to be, it doesn't seem to be quite as prevalent this year, but it used to be that the Common App would automatically bold any writing that you added in. So you just would have to go back in and unbold it. So always check it using that preview feature. I really haven't emphasized that, but I'll show you one other preview in just a moment. The next page of writing is this additional information page. And I always think that this is pretty cool. It's kind of like that requirements grid. Like sometimes like you forget about it and then you're like, oh yeah, I've got this here and I can really make use of it. I had mentioned at the start of the presentation that there was really only one optional piece of the Common App, and this is it. We've come to it. This is the challenges or circumstances question. This is truly optional, and you're going to notice here it's going to give you a list of potential circumstances that you could have faced, experienced, and you can also, think outside the box. If something was, if what happened to you, what you experienced, what you faced doesn't fit neatly in this list, but it is a challenge and circumstance, of course you can write about it here. If you say yes to this question, it's going to unlock the box and you'll just type it in. Unlike your personal essay and other essay responses on the Common App, this doesn't have to be, this creative, like, tell me a story about your life and why it mattered. You just want to explain the circumstances. Of course, if like any growth occurred or you learned something from them or you developed like, a skill as a result, of course you want to highlight it. But here you just want to share those circumstances. All right. So for this additional details box, this is kind of cool. I always like this. So you say no to this, there's nothing there. You say yes. What you have here is you get another text box that's in essence like a free response box. So just think about like all the data that we just talked about in this walkthrough and how colleges are just going to get so much about you. But inevitably, there's going to be something that isn't there. So this can be a place where you can, if you had any additional awards, like let's say I couldn't fit in my photography award and my MVP in soccer, I can add them here. What a lot of students choose to use this section for is to elaborate on activities if they're applying to a college that doesn't allow them to upload a resume. So what do I mean? So let's say I'm applying to, let's see, I know UCF allows you for a resume upload, but FAU doesn't. And I feel as though when I was describing my service work at, this gardens and this couple of service trips I took, in the activities page, didn't really, that 150 characters with spaces didn't fully capture what I wanted to share. So I can provide this information. You can copy it directly from your resume. Just be aware that the spacing might go a little bit awry, so you might need to fix it. You probably either want to use like an asterisk or a dash in place of the bullet points because those usually don't copy over. But you can just add in those additional details. Now, this is not the space to copy paste your entire resume. It's just for those key activities or perhaps activities that didn't fit on the activities page. And I'll just show you what it looks like in preview now that I've said yes. Let me go up to the top here. When I click on the preview box, let me just make sure, oh good, you guys can see that pop out, is I see my personal essay first. Then I see my additional activity information. And, oh, here we go. This is interesting because any writing on the Common App page, that my Common Application page, so I wrote up that brief explanation for why I was taking FLVS classes, and that's also going to appear on that page so I can preview it. Let me actually, while I'm thinking about the preview page, let me pop back into activities. This is nice. Use this preview tool. This is actually when you go to submit the Common App, you're going to see all the pages exactly like this because this is how the colleges are going to receive them. And this is a great way as you complete a section to go through and I can see, well, my green check is missing, but I can see, oh yeah, look, I forgot to, indicate, the years I played lacrosse and what my time commitment looked like. It would be marked as incomplete. You'd have to finish it before you applied. But this is a good way to kind of, do a little quick check and make sure everything is looking good and as you want it. All right. So let's go back over, give you some takeaways for the writing. All right, for the writing page. Again, that personal essay, personal statement, you're aiming for about 500 to 600 words. It's anecdotal. It's the universal essay that's going to all of the colleges on your list. Even if a college says it's optional, we always tell students, go ahead and send it. Just be aware when you add in any writing to the Common App, just check to make sure that like the spacing didn't go awry or like there's not some like weird bolding. Challenges and circumstances is truly optional. As I said, we do have a great webinar that we recently recorded. If you want more information about getting started with your college essay. And again, you've got that nice additional information section. Again, any challenges or circumstances, I would probably use that challenges and circumstances text box and then save that additional information for additional activity details, maybe additional AP scores, additional awards, anything else that you couldn't fit on that main page. And again, those key resume details that didn't fit on 150 character space in the activity page, but that's only going to be for colleges that didn't allow a resume upload. Courses and grades. I'm going to show this to you very briefly. Then we're going to pop over and look at a couple of the colleges pages, and then we'll wrap up for the evening. And I can see as I'm kind of flipping back and forth that we got a lot of questions in the box. So I want to make sure that I have plenty of time to answer those. So let me explain courses and grades over here. All right, so when I go into courses and grades, let me pop over here. Most of you will not have to fill out this section. You only have to fill it out if it's required by the college, and you will see that as you add colleges to your list. If it's not used, if none of the colleges use it, then great news. You don't need to fill this out. But I have a college on my list that does, so I'm going to need to fill it out. It's a pretty straightforward process, but like with anything, it does take a little bit of time. So one of the questions, you're actually going to report by grade. So you're going to report all the courses and grades that you took in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. Most of you, you're going to be applying to college before you get 12th grade grades. Now, we're not talking about like your quarterly progress report. We're talking about like most students will get like their final grades are like those 2 semester grades you get for year-long classes. So if you don't have any of those, most students are typically answering no to this question. Let me just show you what one of these pages look like. So I'm going to click on Edit 9th grade. And you can see in this pop-up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the school and, confirm that this is my 9th grade year. This is my grading scale. This goes by semesters. So I'm going to find the subject. Let's see, in 9th grade, I took English 1 honors. I'm going to pick the course level. Let me find honors. Good. And then let's say my grades are reported by, let me give myself, I got a B. Let's say semester 2, I got an A. I don't put in the final grade unless, maybe my high school averages my semester 1 and semester 2 and provides a final. Maybe my school only provides final year-end grades. Again, this should match your transcript exactly. So definitely if you do have to fill out courses and grades, students, like if you're working, with a parent, another family member, one of you should be doing the data entry and the other should be, reading through the transcript. And then you will, you can review it at the end and make sure that everything is accurate. So let's say here, my credits aren't broken down my semester. I just get, a final credit at the end of the year. And then I simply add another course, my algebra. Let's do my algebra 1. That was a college prep. And algebra 1, let's say I got a B for the full year because that's one of my EOC classes. So I don't get 2 semester grades. I get a single final grade. Hopefully you get the picture. from here. All right, let me click continue. I do the same for 10th, for 11th. And by the way, this other courses is going to be any middle school, post 12th grade, if you happen to be applying to college after you graduate, or summer courses that appear on your official transcript. So if you took a course that doesn't appear on your official transcript, you're not going to self-report it here. What you're probably going to have to do is send a transcript from that school, from that college, to all the colleges on your list so they can receive a record of the class you took and the grade you earned. All right, so a couple quick takeaways from this one here. Again, most colleges are not going to require the courses and grades. Do get a copy of your transcript, or if like you're using like your online transcript equivalent, just make sure that everything looks correct there. Again, if you notice any errors in your transcript, speak to your school counselor before it's sent to the colleges. Every so often students might see a missing grade or a missing class or something of that nature. So you always want to check that transcript before it goes out. Yeah, and that should be pretty straightforward. All right, so we're going to now switch gears a little, and kind of the last sort of part of my presentation, we're going to look at some of those colleges pages. So I've shown you all 7 pages of the My Common application, and now we're going to look at some of those college specific sections, starting with the FERPA and recommendations. All right, so in order to access my college list, I'm going to come over here on the left-hand side and I'm going to click on my colleges. And what I'm going to do is to sign my FERPA and start adding recommenders. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is let me go into a school that I know takes recommenders so I can kind of show you that. I'm going to go over into Tulane and I'm going to click on this recommenders and FERPA page here. Now, the FERPA, you're only going to sign once. I've already signed mine, but I'm going to show you the details, which you'll see in that pop-up on my screen there. So what the FERPA does, you're basically, signing 2 things here. First of all, the FERPA authorizes, your high school to send, transcripts, letters, and recommendation on your behalf. And then the second thing that you're going to be asked is whether or not to waive your letters of recommendation, or the right to review the letters of recommendation. We strongly recommend that you waive your right to review those letters of recommendation. And in some instances, your teachers won't agree to write you a letter of recommendation until you have waived your right. So just be aware of that. Now, the FERPA, you're only going to fill out once. And then you're going to make sure anytime you sign anything on the Common App, by the way, whether it's like your application affirmation, your FERPA, an early decision agreement, sometimes you're asked to, by the colleges to kind of sign off or maybe initial something, just make sure you're using that legal name. Always for any calendar inputs, again, I always say, click on that calendar icon so you'll do it right the first time. I click save and close. Good. Now, one time only, and you can do it from any, same thing for the FERPA, you can do it from any one of the colleges, is you're going to invite your school counselor one time only. So this is where you need to know their email address, their first and last name. After you input it, you invite it, and they will get a notification. Letters of recommendation. So I always like to talk to students about this. Before you start adding your teacher recommenders to your Common App, is you want to make sure you've asked them to write you a letter of recommendation. The best time to do this, honestly, is at the end of junior year. Before you break from the summer, is to, go up to, a couple of those junior year academic teachers, English, math, science, social science, world language, and speak to them and, just say, hey, Mrs. Hart, I really enjoyed, your AP English class this year. I'm excited to start, filling out my college applications. I'm going to get started over the summer. I would be very honored if you would write me a letter of recommendation for my colleges. Would you be willing to? And then certainly, your teacher can say yes or no. And then assuming that she says yes, you can follow up with an email in which you can basically, in that email, include like highlights from this class. What made it one of your favorites? How did you feel that you contributed to the class? What were some of the ways that what were some of your favorite projects? That's just really going to help your teacher write a very specific anecdotal letter on your behalf. The more anecdotal, the better. Your school counselor may have to fill out a counselor letter of recommendation as well, or supply a counselor letter of recommendation. And we tend to see, a lot of students, in those a lot of students will have like a Google Classroom where they get all that senior class information, and many of them will have access to a brag sheet that sometimes teachers will use, sometimes counselors will use in order to help write a strong letter of recommendation. You're going to invite the teacher once. You'll select the subject, you'll put in their email address, first and last name, you'll invite them. And then going forward, and I don't think I haven't invited anyone, but going forward, I only invite them once. And then going forward, I'll see their name in like a drop-down menu. So I can click, oh, I would like Mrs. Hart to write, to send Mrs. Hart's letter of recommendation to Tulane and maybe University of Miami. So that is the Recommenders and FERPA page. And let me just give you a couple tips there. Again, you for the FERPA, you fill it out once. It's one and done. And by the way, if you filled it out prior to that August 1 rollover, you do have to enter it in again. Same with your school counselor's email. Same with any teacher letters of recommendation. Now remember, not every college will allow for a letter of recommendation upload. Indeed, many public universities, like many of our Florida State universities will not. So you're just going to have to go through each college's recommenders page and just to see how many letters are required. And, and then you can start inviting and assigning teachers. One thing I didn't point out here is if I go to a high school that uses one of those third-party platforms like Naviance or Score or Maya Learning, on that recommenders page, instead of being, I'll have to sign the FERPA regardless, but instead of adding my school counselor's name and email and my teacher's contact information for those letters of recommendation, I'm going to get a page of instruction that's basically going to alert me. Your school is using Naviance, go to your Naviance and you will be making those letter of recommendations transcript requests. Again, if you're not sure, follow your school's instructions. You have to link the Common App to that platform and make those requests that way. All right, so last two pages here. And actually, I'm going to combine these. I'm going to show you one college's questions page and talk about a few little pieces of information there. And then I'm going to jump and show you the supplement page. And then I'll just run through the tips, and then we're going to get to the questions. So just about set here with the actual formal presentation. But let me go back on my Common App and get that going. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to start with University of Central Florida. So this is going to vary from college to college, but I want to show you UCF's page just to kind of highlight some of those pieces of information that you're going to see for each college. So remember this overview page that we previewed when we were adding colleges via the college search tab. Now I see it. I always recommend students take a look at this. Here are your deadlines. Here are those links if you want to learn more about this school. I know UCF happens to have a why do you want to attend UCF essay. So maybe I want to take a little tour, spend some time on the website to really write a strong why UCF essay. Here are my deadlines. Notice here I've got key dates for early action applicants. My application is due October 15th, and then I've got another month to submit those additional materials, such as official score reports. So definitely read this section here. This is really lots of good overview for the application. Then you can start jumping in and answering the questions. So what's really nice about these questions is many of them are drop down. So here's general. And my student status is I'm a first time in college. What term am I applying for? I think I'm going to apply for fall. I feel that my GPA and test scores, are pretty strong for UCF. Maybe if I'm a student for whom UCF is more of a reach, I may want to be considered for summer start, but let's stick with fall for now. Here's where I'm going to indicate my admission plan. So every college will offer, usually a few different admission plans. If you're offered early action and you're not applying to a school that has some sort of restricted early plan that may not even allow you to apply early action. But most colleges, even if you're applying to one binding early decision, you can generally apply to all early action. But check the college's policy, make sure you are clear on that. But I always want to apply early action. It's non-binding. Many times it's the same deadline as, the scholarship deadline. And it also allows me to receive a decision a little earlier, and definitely, can give me a little bump in chances of admission. If I am, interested, if I'm a Florida resident and I get my residency for tuition purposes, I'll select yes. Academics, I'm going to pick my major, and just be aware that some colleges, and this is why I selected UCF because it's a great example, they have multiple campuses, and there are certain majors that you can only do at one of those campuses. So just be aware, if I really want, for instance, hospitality, most of my classes are going to be at the Rosen College of Hospitality Management. So definitely do your research. I'm just going to pick something. Let me go back. I think I said I was going to be business, so let me stick with business here. I'm going to be pre-management. Select continue. All right. I wanted to highlight this. This is the activities page. Many colleges, if they are going to allow for a resume upload, it's usually going to be housed in their own activities page. If not every college will allow for a resume upload, UCF's does, and I know where it is, so that's why I'm showing it. Notice here too, I have an optional essay. Is it really optional? No. Certainly, I should take advantage of this space to tell UCF about one of my extracurricular activities. Maybe it was that that job that I've been working at throughout high school. Maybe it's my lacrosse commitment. But this is a great place, or this is an area in which you do get that space to elaborate on that activity. Notice that it's optional, but again, it is truly not optional. You're also going to see some questions that pertain to discipline, criminal history, so you will need to answer truthfully there. Contacts and family is going to be relatively straightforward. You're going to be asked, have you previously applied to UCF? Do you wish to be contacted via cell phone? We usually recommend yes. Chances are, even though email is still going to be the most important way that the colleges are going to notify you, including, your offer of admission, sometimes they do utilize texts as well. So definitely, take advantage of any opportunity for that college of interest to contact you. Take advantage of it. Same thing if you have a family question. Usually they're going to ask, did your parents attend this school? Do they work at this school? Last year was funny. I worked with 2 sets of twins. So we had a lot of yes. My sibling is also applying for admission to the same school. And then you just provide that information. I'm pointing out writing here, and this is again kind of why I chose this school to kind of go through. Notice how I get that little green dot, my green check. It says it's complete. These essays here. Why did you choose to apply to UCF? I absolutely want to write an essay, optional or not, that is allowing me to really share my enthusiasm and research as to why I wanted to apply to this school. And notice this is a very complimentary essay. We see a lot of these, kind of this is almost like, what attracts you to the school? What do we offer that attracts you to the school? The second question, what qualities or unique characteristics do you possess that will allow you to contribute to the UCF community? So how are you going to give back to the school? We see a lot of supplemental prompts, additional college's own questions. Sometimes we call them the writing supplements. We see a lot of questions framed this way. Definitely, even if it's optional, please do answer these. UCF even says, students who are admitted are working on these essays, are submitting these essays, that most students do choose to submit these essays. So definitely do take advantage of that. I already spoke to you all about the recommenders and FERPA page. And then, as I pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, when you have finished all of those My Common Application questions, plus all of my UCF's questions, just make sure to go back and make sure, even if you see that green dot, double check, make sure you've answered even all those optional questions. Then this will be your opportunity to review and submit the Common App. You will do one college at a time. And then, I mentioned at the start of our meeting that, kind of getting a good plan in place, really looking at those deadlines, UCF, FAU, Clemson, University of South Carolina, Chapel Hill. There's many colleges that have like that October 15th deadline. So prioritize those schools. Usually other early deadlines are usually like November 1, November 15th, kind of line up those colleges, put these on your calendar, put a reminder on your phone, download that applicant's grid, and, just make sure that you and, your parents, the adults in your life, are helping you manage those deadlines. All right, one final thing to show you on the Common App. And then I'm just going to quickly go through some of those takeaways, and then I'm going to pop over and check out those questions. Let me show you an example of a writing supplement. So in the case of UCF, and indeed most other colleges, if they have an additional essay, it's going to be in the questions area. And usually it's under like additional information, writing, things we want to know about you. I don't know. You'll see them. Sometimes they have a clever name. Sometimes they're just simply called writing. Some schools will put their writing supplement actually in this area called writing supplement. Let me show you what it looks like for GW. So here I have a supplement. It's optional. So quick show of hands out there. I know I can't see everyone, but yeah, raise your hand if this is optional. No one should be raising their hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the GW's essay prompt, and I'll pick one or two. Again, I'll kind of spend some time, brainstorming some of these ideas and pick the one that seems to be the one that I can write best. After it is done and edited, I'm going to, copy it and paste it in here. And then the process, and this is just something, again, it's unlikely you may have to do this, but I always like to advise students to be aware of it. When it comes time to review and submit GW's application, it's actually going to be kind of step one, step two, if you want to think of it that way. You're going to review and submit the Common App. So that's going to include all the My Common Application pages, plus all of these questions that are unique to GW. So you're going to get that out. You're going to pay your fee. You get your confetti. Hey, it's done. Now, have that writing question done. Immediately go to review and submit the writing supplement. And all you're going to see when you review it is going to be the preview of that essay. You're not going to have to pay another fee. The fee that you pay for when you actually submit it, that covers this writing supplement. And just make sure, you submit it right away. It has the same deadline as GW. Sometimes students aren't aware of it. They overlook it. They think they have their application in, and then they're like, oh my goodness, I forgot to submit my writing supplement and I missed a deadline. So just be aware to, just put a little note if you have a college with an actual writing supplement, just to make sure that consider it, it has to be done and ready to go the same day that you are submitting to the college. All right, so let me go back over here and just do a few quick takeaways, and then I'm going to get to your questions. All right, so again, I talked about each questions page. And one of the things I didn't mention is you can kind of jump from college to college, and you can, so you could fill out, a few of those general academic questions for one college, and then jump over and, fill out a few other questions for another college. So you can kind of move back and forth from college to college. Once you select your admissions plan, that's your, deadline, then on the dashboard, you'll start seeing those deadlines pop up. So you'll see October 15th and November 1st and December 1st. And usually when you get a little bit closer to the deadline, you start getting like a little like countdown. I think the font turns red, and sometimes you get a little clock, or sometimes you see 5 days to deadline. So it's certainly a good visual reminder, of that things are due. Let's see. And again, each college is going to have its own page with questions, and that may include supplemental essays. Beware of hidden essays that are triggered by your answer to another question. So sometimes colleges will have specific essays like why this school, why this major, but they're specific to a major. So like if I check off an engineering box, I'm going to get an essay that's going to pop up, why engineering at University X. If I applied to like the liberal arts school, I might get a question, why do you want to study this major, in this program? So just to be aware of those, that sometimes you don't see all the essays until you actually select one of those boxes. And again, just to be aware that sometimes things that are optional are already marked as complete. So when you log in and you're like, wow, I don't remember filling out these pages. Great, I must be all done. No. Go through each of them. Remember, very, very few things are truly optional in college admission, especially you don't want to like miss the opportunity to upload your resume, to, write a supplemental essay, so just to be very mindful of that. I mentioned the supplements, so again, we're after August 1st. So supplements, we sometimes use that term interchangeably to refer to either an extra essay, or sometimes that essay itself that's in that supplement page, that writing supplement like I showed you for GW. Spend your time working on these other essays. Sometimes, you spend so much time really like getting such a great Common App personal essay, and sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, and I have to write 5 more essays. But really, spend the same amount of time and care on those essays. It's really important. Sometimes those essays can even be more important than that Common App personal statement. I would certainly say if you're using an essay to explain why you want to study at that college, I mean, that really, really matters, or how you want to contribute to that college. Those are really important. And then just don't forget, if you happen to have a college with that writing supplement, just make sure you submit it immediately after submitting that college's Common App. Same deadline. And you can see the essay requirements for those colleges by going to this Common App page. And that's where, if you wanted to, kind of research, or honestly, as you add the colleges to your list using the college search, you can, go into the questions and then start finding the essays that way. Alrighty, friends. Well, I appreciate your time and attention. As I said, this is a longer one this evening because we had a lot to cover. We've got a lot of great college admissions webinars coming up throughout the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. If you enjoyed spending the evening with me, I do invite you to come back next Wednesday, same time. I'm going to be talking about the STARS. That's the former SAR. That's a self-reported grades platform, courses and grades platform that's used by many colleges. So like to have you come back and see me a week from now. Hope to see you there. That'll also be recorded. Of course, reach out to us if you need any help. Now I'm going to turn over and look for questions. And actually, why I'm doing that, I'm going to put my email on the bottom of the screen. And thank you all for staying. Really appreciate it. Let's see. Okay, so right now you should see my email, heart at score at the top. And you can also see our contact information as well too. All right, let me pop over into the chat. And let me go here and let's see. So starting from the top, let's see. Oh, we got some really good questions. So I think I already mentioned the webinar is being recorded, and we'll get it marked up with those timestamps. So you should be able to go back and view everything. Let's see. This is an excellent question. Is it possible to go back into the Common App and update it? Example, with an award or a change grade or test score after I've already submitted, or do I need to contact the college admissions office? Wonderful question. Yes. If you've already submitted to the college, then if you make any changes, like you get another award, or you've taken on another activity, or maybe, maybe you had a grade that needed to be corrected, or you needed to make an adjustment to your schedule, you'll have to notify all the colleges to which you've already applied directly. And usually they give you instructions, via email. You'll set up what's called an applicant portal after you apply. In many places, in many instances, there's actually even like a little, own upload on their site. They're like, if you want to provide additional information, upload it here. Now, if you have any remaining colleges that you haven't applied to yet, then yes, you can go in, you can edit that Common App so any of those future submissions will include the new information. So I hope that's clear. That's an excellent, excellent question. Let's see. Is it mandatory to fill out the FAFSA info from not applying for aid? Another great question. In most instances, and I'm just going to just kind of qualify my response, I don't work with students on financial aid, so I'm just going to speak more in generalities. But if your family doesn't need financial aid, you don't have to fill out the FAFSA. However, there are some colleges that will award merit-based scholarships, and you need to have a FAFSA on file, even if you're not qualified for need-based aid, if that makes sense. So definitely something, go into a college's like financial aid page. Sometimes an admissions site will also post information about merit awards. And if it's not clear, reach out is what I would do. So the answer, as with many things in college admissions, is going to be, it depends. Let's see. Do you put FLVS if the class is taken at your current high school because they don't offer it? AP Calculus BC, and it'll show up on your current high school transcript. Does that get entered under other high schools attended? Yeah, that's a good question. I might check with your school counselor about that. I mean, it's certainly not gonna, and usually that's the case. Many times when students do take FLVS, even if it's more for like enrichment or to add a class in, those courses and grades still show up on the transcript, but we still advise students just to say, oh, I'm taking this FLVS class because, I wanted to enrich my schedule. I wanted to add to my schedule. Or in your case, that you didn't have that class available to you. So I would list it, since it will show up on your transcript, as FLVS. I believe it'll still appear like that. But if you're truly in doubt, you could also speak with your school counselor, and maybe there's like a protocol that other students, have followed in previous years. Let's see. Ooh, does parent one in Common App have to match parent one in FAFSA? That's a great question. And I do apologize. I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. Again, I don't advise students on financial aid. I mean, I would say it certainly wouldn't hurt to keep it consistent, but I don't know if the colleges on their end are matching up that information, because I know for the parent information on your Common App, again, you're putting in, like, the parent's job, where they went to college, if they went to college, definitely if you're providing additional information for a parent on the college's own page, sometimes they'll do that. Is then I would just make sure that would be consistent. But what I might do is I might reach out to the Office of Financial Aid for the college that you're applying to, or colleges, and get an answer to your question. They can help you. All right. Thank you all. These were some really great questions, and I totally appreciate your time and attention, and apologize that some of my slides weren't popping up on the screen, but I know the Common App was, and that's kind of the piece that really matters. So again, thank you all for coming tonight. Hope to see some of you next week when we do this again for the STARS, the SSAR. That one should be, a usual closer to an hour. Anyway, have a great start to your senior year. Good luck with your applications, and hope to see you soon. Good night.